Oop. Oh, let me do, let's see, gotta do side by side. All right, Matt, welcome to the broadcast. How are you this morning?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to have this conversation. So let me let me get the Instagram live stream started. I'm going to aim it at the screen and we'll see how this works. I've never done this before, like I said, so it could be a total disaster, but there's a little bit of a glare on the screen, but I think it'll actually work. So just go ahead and start that. Okay. We'll see how that works. All right. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining the broadcast. Really excited to have this conversation. So kind of tell us just a little bit about yourself and what led you to write this book and, you know, how you got into the whole flat earth thing. Oh, I need to, yeah, there we go. Okay. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So in 2015, well, let me talk a little about myself. I'm a Christian, father of 7. I'm a 2020 cold and flu season survivor, just like the rest of us. Made it through 2020 and and we're here. So yes, Christian father of 7. Got a bunch of kiddos running around. You may even see one running around in the background here. So things are going crazy at our house.
No problem.
Was not always a Bible believer. In my 20s, the subject of cosmology and heliocentrism was something that kept me from even reading the Bible. So this topic is near and dear to my heart because I do believe it has implications for people that don't believe the Bible. And in my late 20s, I started actually reading it for myself, started to realize the Bible was a lot different than what some of these talking heads told me it was. And so when I first started reading it for myself and listening to Christian research organizations like Answers in Genesis, Institute for Creation Research, I started to see that the Bible was a lot different than what people told me, especially in the like Genesis 1 through 11 area, which is definitely my passion. That's the creation account all the way through the Tower of Babel. It's like 1,500 years of world history crammed into like 11 pages, and it's super fascinating to me. And when I was learning about Genesis 6 and the giants, the Nephilim, they're called, I stumbled across a video that I didn't even realize it was a flat earth video. But as you know, on YouTube, sometimes you can't even see the full title of the video you're going to watch, but it was about an individual who I was watching a lot on his giant research. And then I watched it, and honestly, some people will tell you the first time that they hear about it, they think it's a joke. But I immediately felt like I got punched in the chest by God and said, it felt like this was truth. And from that point on in 2015, I started doing my own experiments, my own research. It was, you know, the guy was telling me in the video how you can still circumnavigate the flat earth, how sunrise and sunset still work on the flat earth, how the map of the United Nations is the map of the flat earth. And then he said, and then I went and looked at the Bible to see what the Bible said. And like I told you, I was obsessed with Genesis 1 through 11. So when he said that, it was like, you know, the movie moment where you're zooming out and zooming in at the same time, everything hitting me. And I remember the exact place I was sitting on the floor watching this video. And like I said, I felt like a movement of the Holy Spirit, like a revelation saying like, you need to look into this because it is truth. And I understand people aren't going to accept it just because I say that. We can go into more detail. But from then on, I started researching it, doing my own experiments. I wrote a book. I actually met my wife at a flat earth conference in Edmonton. In
They have flat earth conferences? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So back prior to the Fauci era, we were doing a lot of conferences. I was probably speaking 4 or 5 times a year at different conferences. This one in particular was in Alberta, Canada. And I'd actually seen my wife online prior to this conference, and I didn't think she was available. And I actually said a prayer. I was like, God, I need a wife. I need a woman like this. And sure enough, he sent me the exact woman, which is amazing. And that's a whole nother podcast. But you know, there's new children in this world. Like I said, father of 7. So after I met my wife, there's 4 new children about to be in this world. And I honestly, I've only seen good fruit come of this. I think there's some misconceptions, some stigmas, as with anything. So I'm excited to get into more detail and answer some questions. So
Man, that is amazing. One thing that stuck out to me when you were talking just now was you said you described the moment when you had this revelation and you felt like God said, you need to look into this. And that's interesting to me because, I mean, obviously flat earth's a very controversial subject for people, because we're all told for our whole lives that the earth is a globe. And just for the audience, and so it's like I'm completely open to this. I'm not quite on the side of I really, really, I believe it, but I definitely think it's possible just based on how much we've been lied to, which is why I wanted to have you on. And because I'm sure a lot of the audience has a lot of the same questions. But I think that's interesting to me because I went through a similar experience with the whole and I'm not sure where you stand on the issue, and it's not what we're here to talk about, but I had a very similar experience with the whole Israel thing, because I had thought one way about Israel my entire life. I strongly believed it. And then I started to see some things that challenged my narrative. And all of a sudden I had a similar moment where I just like, oh my gosh, been believing this massive lie my whole life. And I had that same experience. I felt very convicted. Like, you really need to study this. You really need to look into this no matter how. And I was scared because I started to put some stuff out on social media. I got viciously attacked. I mean, just brutal. And I was used to my audience pretty much agreeing with everything that I said. So it was like, it took a heavy emotional toll, but I felt like I was like, no, you need to keep going. Like, this is the truth. You need to keep researching it. So I appreciate you taking a stand on this because I know it's a very controversial topic, and that's just a great story. So why don't you? I don't know, where do you want to go next? You want to tell us about your book or what? Or
let me just unpack a little bit what I believe and what I don't believe. And in
yeah,
like your Israel comment, I'm probably closer to you than not. I definitely, I think it speaks of a broader time in which we live, or an age of deceit that we live in. And man, it's just tough to know what's right and wrong, which why the Bible tells you to prove all things. It tells you to hold fast to that which is good. So the Bible actually encourages us to look into these things. And I think as responsible adults, we are supposed to. And I don't know that we have time to look into everything, but I do believe that God has given me a flat earth ministry, or biblical cosmology, or I've also dubbed it intelligent alternative design, where I don't think he's given that to everybody, but for me, this has been a tool. It's been a good evangelism tool. So yeah, to start, I mean, I do have a book. It's called The House That Jesus Built. You can find it on Amazon. Everything I talk about today, you can find there, or at Matt, son of Chris, on any of the platforms that I'm on.
can I
And
interject with one comment real quick? Because like I think this ties into what you're about to say. So like I started to be open to flat Earth when because I didn't understand why. That was my main problem. I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. When you start to look at like they tell us what the curvature of the Earth is, and it doesn't really line up with like certain geographical realities that you see. And I'm sure you'll talk about some of that. But I was like, why would they do this? And then I finally understood, like from listening to some podcasts, I'm like, it's to discredit God and the Bible. And that finally made sense to me. So I just wanted to insert that comment.
why don't I talk about that first? Because that's
Yeah.
usually the for people to get over. And what's amazing is I literally have on my notes, discredit God. You just said it.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
answer that question, I'd say, well, why does it matter? How about why does Instagram ask me if I'm sure that I want to follow you when I follow you? Because
Yep.
they constantly put forth false information. So I can believe that or not believe that. And, with evidence, there's two interpretations. You're a lawyer, so you know that in a court of law, you don't have evidence that the other side doesn't have. You're trying to get the judge or the jury to adopt your version of the evidence. And so what's big here is the motive. So I would also say, why the lie of evolution? I assume you don't believe in evolution, but the point is to discredit God, to remove God from the equation, to tell people that in the beginning, not in the beginning God, but in the beginning, nothing exploded and created everything without the help of an all-loving, all-powerful creator. And so talking about evolution, you can go to 2 Peter 3. And 2 Peter 3 says that in the last days, scoffers will come, saying, where is the promise of his coming? All things continue as they have from the beginning. And this is twofold. They say, where's the promise of his coming? And that's referring to the gospel, the imminent return of Jesus